This is a documentary, quote unquote, on Rumble titled "World Premiere: Old World Order. Everything we've been told is a lie," and it's like a conspiracy theory video. I don't even know. And we're just like listening to a little bit of this, and as far as I can tell, the argument is architecture is similar across the world. Like buildings are constructed in a similar way, and that's evidence of aliens? I don't know what point they're trying to get to here. So I want to listen to it, see what they have to say. And while we listen, we're going to play some Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Should be in the background. Won't bother you too much if you never played before. All right, let's listen to this nutter buttery unfold, shall we? We're starting like 2 minutes in or something.
Is it possible that X building was built in the 1890s? And they're giving us timelines of like a year. It was built in a year.
Okay, the Singer building?
They want us to believe we didn't have the technology, that we were low tech, and yet we're building all of these amazing structures.
You know, I said at the beginning of this that the claim is that it's aliens or something, but that's not actually what they've claimed. They haven't claimed anything. They just said we can't build buildings with low technology or whatever. What point are they getting to? Like, what are they driving at actually? Is it aliens? I don't know how else to interpret it.
This disparity between what the narrative says and what's actually there.
You have places, cities in America that look as though they were constructed in medieval Europe.
Dr. Narco.
When nothing was here and people showed up and just got started building, from what we're told. One would assume that they would build with the means that were available to them. Wood, nails if they were lucky. What we get is this narrative that people were showing up and really making do with what they had.
What we learn about.
Like, I don't even know what they're talking about. Like, they're talking about in cities, right? Cities had a lot more resources than out in the country with like a total of 15 people in your caravan. Cities had hundreds of people available to do construction work, and they had architects who studied the best structures and all that, even in the 1800s. What point are they driving at? I don't understand.
In school is there was nothing here. This land was free for the taking. The only inhabitants were wild Indians, and we built everything here. Everything you see in this country, in North America, because we're talking about Canada too, was built by us. After we got here, nothing here.
So are they saying that the Native Americans built all of these incredible buildings before we arrived, and then we just stole them and claimed that we did it? Sounds like something that Americans would do, you know, early Americans, sure, but no, I mean, we have records of this stuff being built. It's just like fictitious.
They had to change the narrative. They had to...
Who is they?
Destroy the evidence. They had to come up with an explanation for who built this, why they built it, when they built it.
Okay, the word they being used here, usually when you say something, when you like start a sentence, if you use the word they, it's been established. The subject of the sentence already been established before it's used. This person is using the word they without establishing a subject and assuming that you know that it's just like some ambiguous evil authority out there that controls everything.
And they had to do that for a lot of buildings.
We are
You hear that? They?
told that during the 1800s, the consensus of North America was low, extremely low, too low.
The consensus of North... Did they mean the census of North America? What did they mean?
Low to justify the infrastructure within the timelines they've provided. Too low to have the experience or knowledge on crafting these glorious buildings.
They're the most exquisite buildings I've ever seen, and there was only a population of a few thousand people at that time. And then I'm looking and there's mud roads and wooden sidewalks. And then I'm looking at this building that is just, it could be out of Paris or Prague. It's
Like, I don't understand.
not computing. And so I'm realizing there again, there's a whole bunch of stories that have to be dug into, rethought, reconsidered, and in some cases completely discarded.
We know.
And who is this guy, and why should I trust a word out of his mouth? I don't understand any of this. They's doing a lot of heavy lifting. Oh, yes. Are they using weasel words again? Oh, yeah, they're using weasel words. See, the subject of the sentence has already been established. Talking about the people in this document, this guy and the person before him. I establish the subjects of my sentences. I don't use weasel words. So stupid.
No longer built like that. How does that happen in a realistic timeline? Wouldn't you be progressing year after year to have incredible buildings? Today, we would be building massive pyramids, massive courthouses.
Okay, pyramids were built like 5,000 years ago or something. We don't need to build those again, right?
Courthouses that last forever. Instead,
And who is this guy anyway? Why am I listening to him? Quick interjection. This won't take long, I promise. I just want to say I'd appreciate it if you check my Patreon. owenmorgan.com/Patreon to find it. YouTube's algorithm goes up and down, so I can never predict where it's going to be. Having patrons gives me some level of stability. Okay, back to the video.
we have the complete opposite. And they're very cheap. The tools have upgraded, supposedly. Yet, our construction has gotten worse.
I don't even know, like, what point is he getting to? Is it aliens?
It's completely backwards.
There's evidence of a worldwide culture that existed in the not too distant past, and the evidence is everywhere. It's an interesting thing because, like, I've spent a lot of my life looking into ancient history and traveling around the world searching into the past, and it isn't
And he's got a British accent, so he's super trustworthy, of course, right?
until recently that I realised that it's actually, I don't have to travel to Egypt or anywhere. It's all right there in Sydney and in London and in San Francisco.
Oh, Australian, my mistake.
And it's all around the world. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. All you got to do is look at the civilization you're living in with the right type of eyes, and you're sort of looking around your city and you're going, well, hang on, what's this building doing here? And why is there a building just like that in the Philippines? Why is there one in Japan? Apparently Japan's borders were closed.
Like, I don't know what he's trying to get to. Japan's borders were closed. Yeah, Japan's borders have been closed. That doesn't mean that no information gets in or out. And the eye developed independently 5 different times. Good ideas propagate, whether people are there to spread them or not. Like, people just default to the best ideas. I don't know what point they're getting to.
Weren't they? Why are we finding what we're told is Greco-Roman style architecture in every country on earth? Was it really Greco-Roman style?
Are you kidding me?
Or is it evidence of a culture that existed, a worldwide culture that existed right around the world in the not too distant past?
If I took a picture of this building behind me and asked any of these people, where do they think this building is in the world? I guarantee you most of them would say Rome or Europe somewhere. But no, it's right here in San Francisco. We have buildings like this all over the country, and they want us to believe that they were built in the early 1900s or the late
Who is they again?
1800s with horse and buggy. And there's just no way that's true. These buildings were built by the prior civilization, master builders, the old world.
So we talking, are we talking aliens that lived here before us? Who are we talking? And, I always trust people with face tattoos all the way up, down their chest and everything. Totally.
World order.
This is the architecture I'm talking about. You'll find this anywhere. New Zealand, Australia, Hong Kong, North America, South America, all over Europe. It doesn't matter where you are. This architecture is replicated. The weird thing is, they akin it to being all built around the 1870s to 1900 mark. So all of the world just shit out of nowhere at the same time. There was nothing before it. Does it make any sense?
Nobody said that nothing was built before 1870. What? Yeah, as Hellbound Hillbilly aptly says, dude needs to put down the pipe, for real. Has he been hanging out with Mike Lindell again?
I don't think antiquity is a long time ago. I think this civilization went just before us. The Edwardians.
Antiquity is a time period between, any time between the 1500s, I think. Usually it's in reference to, Greek and Roman times, between 500 BCE and 1500 CE. Technically, I think. Generally, it refers to Jesus' time, though. So he's saying it wasn't that long ago. It was like 100 years ago or something, or 200 years ago. You can't see it with your own eyes, so how do you know that the world isn't 100 years old? You don't. Are you serious?
It's supposed to be.
By the way, the reason we're watching this in the first place is because it was shouted out by Stu Peters. He had a part in this, okay? Stu Peters, Stu Peters? You know, Stu Peters, the guy who says that Nazis were doing heroic things, that they were heroes.
Nazis were fighting against perverts and
Gay people, so he's saying. He's using them synonymously, of course.
And some of those acts, including those Nazi book burnings, as they're called, were heroic acts. You see, the National Socialists, they promised a return to normalcy.
Nazi. National Socialist means Nazi, if you're unfamiliar. He says Nazis promised a return to normalcy, and we're going to deliver it, presumably, if they hadn't been stopped. And then there's this little ditty from him.
Yesterday, Newsweek called me a pro-Hitler Nazi. Raw Story called me a pro-Hitler Nazi. I don't know how these people get. I mean, they said that I was a Holocaust denier, which is completely false, emphatically false. As a matter of fact, they made up a quote out of whole cloth and said, Stu Peters said, quote, Hitler is a hero. I mean,
it sounds like that's what he said, right?
Never said any such thing. And they can print this stuff with impunity because the hubris is so, because there's no accountability.
And see, when he says accountability, he means, quote, unquote, hang them from a thick rope until they are dead. His words, not mine. Anyway, the point is that Fresh and Fit had this dude on, and he's a Nazi. He's a full-blown Nazi, in my opinion. And he shouted this out. He's got millions of followers, by the way. He's not a nobody by any stretch of the imagination. He's extremely influential, way more than he should be. That's why we're talking about this in the first place.
Thanks. I don't think antiquity is a long time ago. I think this civilization went just before us. You know, the Edwardians are supposed to be around the time of the First World War. So within grandparents' living memory, yet we know nothing about them. It's the control mechanism that covers it up with the education system. They got the news, they got the narrative.
Who's they?
They got, you know, the mainstream to tell you how things are, but the reality is completely different. History goes to the victors.
Who is they? And more importantly, who is he? And why do I give a shit about what this guy believes?
Okay, somebody invaded this place and took over a beautiful, through jealousy, using trade routes, using the sea. And they took over this place. They covered all of this fine architecture with their iconography. So there's literally been a cover-up of history more than one way.
Okay, so they're showing a picture of a building that had brick placed over it, and that's like evidence that we stole these buildings from somebody who was way better at like life than we are. Like,
if you look at Capitol buildings all over the earth, they look the same.
Okay, it's similar architecture, sure, yeah.
They do. They've got columns, they've got domes. It was not random. And every story we're told in our historical narrative about how a place got started was some guy was the first settler there, bought some land, subdivided it, sold it, and pretty soon you have a city. But the whole narrative is based, especially in North America, that there wasn't anything there, and we built it all.
You could look at it, the whole building was a work of art. So there was obviously some pride that went behind that. It wasn't just about making money and throwing shit up as fast as you could. It was about building with a purpose, and that there was symbolism behind these things.
They built them to last. They built them with a certain level of artistry.
Again, who are all of these people? This is framed like a documentary of experts. You know, they get experts in the field on to talk about this. Who are they, and why do I care?
And attention to detail and customization. You see, now you'll go through a neighborhood and every home looks the same. This neighborhood, perfect example. But everything had its own identity, and it was steeped in customization and ornate attention to detail.
Yeah, I mean, this was an age that humans went through where we were obsessed with detail and beauty and building, blah, 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 blah. So yeah, this is not surprising. Like, this is something that we can like look back at history books, read people's diaries. I mean, Hitler had a whole bunch of stuff built from back then. We have like Goebbels' diary and stuff. So like none of this is surprising at all. Like, I don't know what he's going on about, why any of this is surprising.
We don't get that now.
You don't get that now.
Even when you look at the beauty of the buildings from that Tartarian era, if people were actually paying for labor, and you had to get carpenters in there. No, you'd never build buildings like that if you were working by an hourly rate. You'd just be getting it functional. People used to build that stuff because they love to build, because beauty is actually a function. Beauty is actually a function of a creation. When you
Beauty is a function of a creation? That sounds like nonsensical garbage to me personally.
living in a world of beauty, your soul expands, and it's expansive. You can create. You can become all that you can be. And if you can become all that you can be, you sure as hell don't need rulers. So that's why they don't want you to know about any of this sort of stuff. No, no, we're at the pinnacle of our civilization now. This is the best it gets. The best we've ever done. Look at the quality of these walls. That Gothic shit. Look at this. You know? I mean, yeah.
We are still constructing beautiful, ornate buildings to this day. Of course we are. But your little office building doesn't need to be big and beautiful and ornate. It needs to be inexpensive. Are you serious?
When I was like 8 years old, I started researching the pyramids and stuff because no one knew how they were built, you know? So I started.
No one knew how the pyramids were built? Yes, we do. We have a pretty clear idea of how the pyramids were built. Yeah, it was a marvel for the time. Like, oh my God, I can't believe that they did that. But they did, and we know how it worked. It's like not a surprise. You know, there are other incredible things that we don't know how they did it at the time. We can do it now. We just don't know how they did it at the time with their level of technology. Like the the Hanging Gardens of Babylon? Is that? I think that's what it's called. There are like a billion different things that we can look to that are really impressive for that time. But, you know, we have like evidence that they did this stuff.
Looking into ancient history. And as I said, I'd spent most of my life traveling around the world looking at all these ancient sites, and then suddenly you see this civilization that's right there under your nose. It's been there the whole time in all of our Western cities. They covered everything up. It wasn't just inserting the Dark Ages. They changed everything. So when we start even trying to piece it...
Inserting the Dark Ages, he says. Inserting the... So bad guys inserted the Dark Ages, I guess? Some ambiguous they did this? Okay.
Together through the history that they've given us. How do we know any of these places are even the names that we're told they are? How do we know any of these things? How do we know any of the history is true? Because it's not they just put it all together and just shuffle the deck and throw it out to a bunch of countries and name them whatever they want. So it's become extraordinarily difficult to try to trace it through any mainstream history records. All we've got to really go on is the architecture itself. It wasn't thousands of years ago. It was just hundreds of years ago. Even if you go down to South America and look at some of the temples down there, the edges on them, the beveling on them, this is only a few hundred years old. This is not old ancient structures. These are new.
So I guess they've kind of established that the point they're getting to here is we stole all of this stuff from an older civilization, and that we only took over this area like 100 or 200 years ago, and that civilization is not thousands of years old. Is that what they're saying? I think that's what they're saying. They's villain arc, right? That's not how most cities were built up in Europe. Most cities developed around inns along trade routes and at bridges, at bridge crossings and major waterways. At bridges crossing major waterways. Interesting, yeah. And there were like major, what's the word I'm looking for here? There were major breakthroughs in technology that made certain things possible that were not possible before, like the steam engine made it possible to transport large numbers of materials, you know, to further distances, and California was built out like that, you know. Kind of building trade routes more efficiently and stuff. Anyway, these people are like absurd, like completely absurd.
New walls, I've gone there and looked at them myself. You know, nothing is what they tell us. You know, everything is a lie.
Nothing's what they tell us. Everything is a lie. Okay.
Just how big the lie is. You know, and the bigger the lie is, the easier it is for people to believe it.
There's a lot of architecture in the world today on every continent of buildings that are much, much larger than you would think people of our height would build. And
people of our height? So now she's saying that we stole this architecture from tall people?
And so I gave the example of the Supreme Court building in Washington, D.C. as being one of those buildings.
Okay, you know why it's so big and ornate and large? Well, first of all, if people were like, I guess they're saying people would have to be like 15, 16 feet tall, right? Because maybe it has 20-foot high ceilings. First of all, the door would be larger, certainly, right? And second, the inside would have to be larger because it would fit a total of like 4 people that are 16 feet tall. The inner chambers are designed for short people. And third, the ceilings are high for, well, I don't know that this is why they're high, but air circulation and ventilation and things are aided by tall ceilings. You know, hot air rises, cool air falls, so on and so forth. But okay, yeah, I mean, I get maybe we were giants at one point. I suppose so.
The Basilica, the National Shrine at Catholic University in Washington is another example. A huge, huge building.
Look at the Texas state capitol. It's incredible. You've got these pillars around the whole area. It's kind of...
And weirdly, there's a single floor every 9 feet. Is that strange to anybody? Almost like humans are between 5 and 7 feet. Weirdly, we have doors that really tall people have to duck to go into. Huh. Peculiar. Curious.
Kind of the same thing as the Vatican.
I do wonder about Iolani Palace. How old is it? And one thing to look at is it took them 2 years, from 1880 to 1882. How did they build that beautiful, beautiful building? Was that building here longer? Was it here before Captain
Yes, the building was here longer.
Cook? There's no construction pictures and there's none of that stuff. So no power tools, horse and buggy. How is that even possible?
Dude, I love their skepticism on this subject, and I love that it extends up to Noah's Ark and no further. Doesn't go into Noah's Ark territory. Yes, he had to use wooden pegs. He didn't have a hammer. He wasn't even in the Iron Age. But he did it. He did it. I'm telling you. People had methods of building big, ornate, complex buildings before 50 years ago.
You have St. John's Cathedral in New York City. That's not a style of cathedral. That's the real McCoy.
Could you imagine?
Wait, I thought it was St. Paul's Cathedral. Is there a St. John's Cathedral? It's the Cathedral Church of St. John the Divine. Okay, yeah, I guess so. I was thinking St. Paul for some reason. So it's on 113th Street. Where is this? Oh, it's near Columbia. Okay, yeah. West Side, above Central Park. I see.
That being built today, I think that everybody would go crazy.
They have no legitimacy whatsoever, except to trick us and convince us that they do. And that's how they've managed to get away with this. So they could insert themselves in.
Who is they? I still don't know.
And set themselves up as overlords.
Stone building is not just something you can pick up and teach a convict in a matter of weeks. Like we're
Stone building? Yes, it is. Are you kidding? You can teach anybody anything in a few weeks. I mean, they'll just be doing like the basics, but they can pick stuff up. What do you mean you can't teach people things in a few weeks that they can like just start on? I could learn masonry in a few weeks. I wouldn't be very good, but I could probably throw something together in a few weeks.
We're told about Americas and Australia. Truly, that's how we're told these countries were built.
Just extremely sophisticated and technical engineering involved. And you know, there's so many questions that come to mind. How'd they do it? If they were our size, how could they even accomplish this with the technology we were told we had at the time?
You'll find many of the banks, post offices, government centers, especially 100 years ago, were facilitated in these large, glorious stone structures.
No shit. The richest people in society had big, beautiful, ornate buildings. Knock me over with a feather. That surprise, it's too much. I can't believe it. It's too much. Too far-fetched for me that the rich would have a lot of stuff.
Structures. So, number one, the rulers wanted the stronger, more durable, more imposing structures for themselves. That sends a message to the people you're ruling over. We're going to play a little game here with two alternatives, right? And you or I, whoever the person deciding between these two is, I'd like for you to pretend you're a world leader. You're not a good one. You're evil.
Okay.
And you'd like to rule the people underneath your thumb. Or you're looking to maintain control over people. Bear with me and envision these two alternatives.
Alrighty.
In the first, we have the opinion, the theory, the teachings, the paradigm that man is nothing but a carnivorous monkey in outer space, floating on a rock for no reason.
Oh boy, are we going down the I'm sorry. Oh boy, are we going down the flat Earth route now? Is that what's happening right now?
In the middle of nowhere by accident. And this all got kicked off 43 bajillion years ago on a Tuesday at 6 o'clock p.m. And they
okay.
can determine this with their color star charts and then, moon dust and things like that. And going on to a long, vast existence of nothing, just surviving by instinct, on par with an animal. Justification for
Okay, now they're shooting down evolution, I guess.
any morals, ethics, no real.
Dude, I love this image. I like this a lot, actually. I'm screenshotting this. I'm taking this. I'm stealing this background here.
No pursuit of true happiness, no pursuit of harm.
Hellbound Hillbilly says this is a display of why we need to fund public education. Exactly. 100%.
And understanding here on the earth. And this is all what we're living today. There's no spiritual accountability. There's no understanding of beauty. Well, on the other,
no understanding of beauty.
Alternative. On this side, we have a purposeful creation, a purposeful design to not only the human being, but the entire earth, the laws of nature. No theories. No theory.
Dude, I love this song.
Only laws ingrained into existence, woven into the fabric of reality by the designer, the creator, not in a linear sense, not, back then, this many years ago or that. It doesn't work that way. This is the fabric of what we live in.
Yeah, I don't understand, what point he's trying to get at here. This is so weird. And also, my God, this song is so metal.
There is a value placed on beauty. Why? Because God has a beautiful creation. In order to return the favor, mankind has an impulse to create beautiful things. In recent times, this has been robbed from us, but nonetheless, it's in the soul of every human being to not only value beauty, to seek it out, to place a high, high emphasis on it. This is how the ancients maintained their ways of life. Geometric, proportional laws of beauty.
Oh boy, here we go. What the hell am I watching? I love the TV, by the way. I'm a huge fan of old stuff.
There's never been anything like it in the whole world.
It's right in our own hometown. Grandpa, they'll never tear it down, will they?
Well, they'd better not.
Well, they didn't tear all of them down. Not that they put them up in the first place. The World's Fairs showcase many of our ancient structures in their grandest form. Yet, we are sold the story that these are alleged temporary
bastards
buildings, all being built in record-breaking time for the purpose of a worldly gathering, a gathering to showcase new technology, or perhaps just taking credit for the old. With so many lights on display, one would only assume that power plants and electrical resources such as wiring and even electricians were widely available. However, during this time period, that wasn't the case at all. Therefore, how were these vast areas in the late 1800s able to light the evening sky?
Are you serious with me right now? Okay, wait a minute. One more time. Let's just listen to this one more time.
Electricians were widely available. However, during
1 second.
Temporary buildings, all being built in record-breaking time for the purpose of a worldly gathering, a gathering to showcase new technology, or perhaps just taking credit for the old. With so many lights on display, one would only assume that power plants and electrical resources such as wiring and even electricians were widely available.
No, this was in a city, I assume. I'm not sure which city this is. You know what? Let me just do a Google Lens thing, see if I can find out. New York City had electricity as early as like 1850 something, I think. The first power plant was set up by Thomas Edison. It's Thomas Edison, I think, on Pearl Street, Manhattan. 1882. It was 1882. Pearl Street. Yep, I was correct. I want to be a tour guide in New York City. I think that'd be the shit. Just haven't gotten around to it. There's a lot involved. You have to qualify. And doing a Google Lens thing here. What is this? World's Fairgrounds, 1904, St. Louis. Yeah. Okay. Night view of 1904 World's Fairgrounds from the DeForest Wireless Telegraphy Tower is what this is. So electricity, power plants had been around for 30 years already by this point. This is like saying, how could artificial intelligence exist when the first smartphone was just invented 20 years earlier? I mean, that's exactly what this is.
However, during this time period, that wasn't the case at all. Therefore, how were these vast areas in the late 1800s able to light the evening sky, like a modern-day theme park? Or was there a different method for harvesting energy?
I don't understand what point they're getting at. Like, usually with these conspiracy theories, there's an underlying idea that they have to lay down.
Now ask yourself, what part of these magnificent buildings look temporary?
I don't know what they're talking about, temporary. Like what?
What part of these buildings look rushed? And most importantly, what part of these buildings look new? Or you can just believe these guys.
With these World's Fairs, it was all brand new. This is what they tell us. It
was
meant to be temporary. So they used plaster of Paris and wood and all these other structures. And if you look at the pictures, that's not what you see. You see these massive masonry structures that look like what you see in Europe. They had these in places like Chicago, Omaha, Portland, Seattle, Guatemala. They had them in Tasmania,
Georgia, Louisiana, Ohio, Canada.
Each one of these fairs, each one was built in 2 years or less. Each one was...
Yeah, I don't understand. Like, there's a technology boom in society, and then people use the technology in all kinds of creative ways after that. Of course, like the internet came about in, well, I mean, the internet's been around in some form for a long time, but the internet really got its footing in the 90s, right? And by the 2000s, practically everything was using the internet and computers, and everything was all converted. The motor vehicle, the car, was created 1 year, and like horse and carriage sales dropped through the floor the following year. Hang on, I have a graph for this. I use this anytime somebody talked about artificial intelligence and its evils with me, like our AI is going to take jobs and shit. Transition from horse-drawn carriages to petrol cars in the 1920s. Data originally from Nakasenovic, 1986. Graph taken from Grubler et al. 1999, reproduced with permission. Left, raw data on a semi-log axis. Top right, the data when expressed as fractions of the total F follows very closely logistic curves. Bottom right, this demonstrated by a transformation of the data from the form F over 1 minus F on a semi-log axis. Anyway, so in 1850, you've got this number of horses and horse buggies being produced, basically. And it's on a slight incline until 1900. The car is invented, and it just falls through the floor. But car production jumps through the roof. See how that works? Yeah, how could society possibly do that? I mean, these people are acting as though everything just came out of nowhere all of a sudden. Well, yeah, the car was invented out of nowhere all of a sudden. And then everybody was using it. The internet was invented all of a sudden, and everybody was using it. This is not surprising. I don't understand. Like, we can look at the gradual growth of this stuff. Horse-drawn carriages, yeah. One talented horse, I know.
Was magically populated by millions of people that came from all over the realm to participate in this event.
They started with the Crystal Palace Exposition.
Crystal Palace Exposition, okay.
In 1851. So what they tell us in 9 months, from the moment they conceived of it to when it was built, it was 9 months of getting it all together in this gigantic plate glass structure with fountains and trains and all the bells and whistles. Now, supposedly, they moved that entire
Bastard! God, I hate it when he swallows me like that. So annoying. Sorry, step back.
gigantic plate glass structure with fountains and trains and all the bells and whistles. Now, supposedly, they moved that entire structure to a different location in London in 1854. And that in the 1930s, that burned down. So, you know, show pictures of this Crystal Palace structure, which is massive, and all the things that are there. Up, we have to move that, no problem. Oops, it burned down, which is typically what happened to a lot of these World's Fair structures.
If you could erase it from history, people don't see it as a potential future. And I think that in itself is, for me, the moral of hiding history.
Holy heckers, guys. I'm gonna lose. I think I'm gonna lose this. I'm getting messed up right now.
About hiding the old world. It just doesn't make logical sense to me to build something so grand and then just destroy it.
Really, those was an excuse
All right, I'm starting over.
to take existing infrastructure, build some little bullshit around it, and then when you're finished with your so-called fair, it gives you an excuse to tear everything down.
Who is he, and why should I trust a word out of his mouth?
And nobody questions.
They might have built a couple of these buildings,
Again, who the hell is this guy, and why should I trust him?
and you can actually tell the buildings that they built because they look like dog shit. Now, we have buildings that can hold 10,000 people, huge, giant buildings that look like they were made for a larger race of people, where they say they built it.
Oh my god, dude, please. Why is he even, like, creating this conspiracy theory where there doesn't need to be one? This is just wild to me.